You know Sonic the Hedgehog? You probably know this, but in the early 90s, there were two different Sonic cartoons airing at the same time. One was dark and dramatic, the other was a hilarious comedy about chili dogs.
Greetings, fellow gamers. Dave here from Gamers Guff. Welcome to the TV game. This is where I review episodes of TV shows based on the most iconic video games. And what better place to start than with the double television debut of one Sonic the Hedgehog. Following the success of the first two games in 1992, Sega decided to expand and approached Deke Entertainment and ABC about a licensing deal. As a result, two TV shows were developed. The first candidate was Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, a syndicated cartoon series for the after-school kiddies, silly, lighthearted, and goofy left, right, and center. Then you have Sonic the Hedgehog, or Sonic SatAM, broadcasted exclusively for ABC. This series was slightly darker, more dramatic, and action-oriented for the Saturday morning cartoon market. Back when Saturday morning cartoons were still a thing in the 90s. Both shows began broadcast in late 1993. It's crazy to think two different TV shows, both complete opposites to each other, offering different interpretations of the same source material.
At the same time?
Of course.
You're certifiable.
Both shows were my personal introduction to Sonic the Hedgehog, as it may have been the case for many others from my generation. So, I thought it'd be fun to pay homage by reviewing the first episode of each show in the production order. So, for part 1 of my short retrospective, let's start with the first produced episode of Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, the Super Special Sonic Search and Smash Squad. Man, that's a mouthful. The episode begins with Sonic running for almost a minute and nothing else in this 22-minute cartoon, animation filler at its finest. We get our introduction to Scratch and Grounder, both of whom are part of a long line of bumbling sidekicks that are often roped with Dr. Eggman's crew. The trap they set on Sonic and their bickering showcases their role as ineffective foils for Sonic, with the goal of trying to catch him with traps only to backfire on them. Afterwards, Sonic tells the story of how it all started, flashing back to Sonic and Tails in an abandoned town, while also showcasing the show's surreal humor right here. Yeah, as you can see, a lot of the visuals and the surreal humor are very reminiscent of Ren and Stimpy, even down to hiring Ken Butterworth as director. This leads to another point I'll make later on. Afterwards, we get the Bounty Hunter convention, during which we are introduced to the Eggman, formerly known as Robotnik, hosting the event. He is pretty much the common cartoon character foil / angry schemer barking orders and often losing his temper.
He helps nice people.
Hey, Sam!
Yosemite. Yeah, Yosemite Sam. The roughest, toughest He-Man, stuffest hombre has ever crossed the Rio Grande.
We also get a clear demonstration of the dynamic between Sonic and Eggman, as Blue Boy here is pretty much a sly but mischievous trickster. Always one step ahead, always in control, always having the last laugh. How very Bugs Bunny of him. Oh, by the way, that's Jaleel White as Sonic himself. Most of you probably know him as the nerdy Steve Urkel. This guy was also apparently a huge thing in the 90s, despite some people expressing some strongly worded feelings for this character. I personally have no real gripes with him, as I have never watched Family Matters growing up. Back then, I had only known this guy as the original voice of Sonic. But alas, I need to acknowledge this anyway because the comments probably will do so anyway. Anyway, Robotnik decides to build new robots to capture Sonic. This is where we get a pure demonstration of the surreal and cartoonish nature of this show. The Scratch and Grounder Reborn. These guys are basically two dimwits that act like bickering brothers half the time. We then get our next foil as we're introduced to Coconuts. This monkey literally just pops in and announces to the audience his motivation.
Job! I'll show him! I'll capture Sonic first!
Coconuts especially seems like the most relatable of Robotnik's minions, as someone struggling to get recognition, but will go through any means of attaining it. He shows a lot of fun, enthusiasm in his goals, while also being completely unhinged and psychotic. His trap is also a stroke of genius, luring Sonic with a fake chili dog stand that turns into a giant robot, even though Sonic ends up beating it with another classic Looney Tunes gag.
One, two, three, 4, 5.
Also, is that a Yosemite Sam reference? This brings me to a point I was mentioning with Ren and Stimpy. There may have been many influences, but at this point it seems blatantly clear that it's clearly trying to mimic the comedy of classic Looney Tunes. Afterwards, we pretty much get more traps, more Sonic easily outsmarting the robots, while pulling counter traps with obvious disguises that they keep falling for. One thing that does make this more interesting is the bickering sibling rivalry between the robots, as they are constantly competing with each other while trying to work together, unsuccessfully. Call me crazy, but the show could have been about those nutcases. They're like the faulty towers of robots.
Sometimes I wish Dr. Robotnik hadn't made us so persistent.
He made me persistent. He made you too dumb to quit.
We do get some sense of plot development in this episode as the robots capture Tails, forcing Sonic to surrender.
Okay, just don't hurt him.
So we do get to know Sonic a little more, as it shows how much he cares for Tails as his little brother. We get more bickering comedy between the robots, which continues to work against them yet again. Coconuts arrives, only to further complicate things as he is tricked by Sonic into allowing the heroes to escape and trap the robots. We then get one more encounter with Robotnik as Sonic basically decides to pull another prank. Basically, he tricks him into cutting his engine and falling onto the robots, killing them in the process? Yeah, I guess he fixed them later on. Also, answering machine joke, the cherry on top. We cut back to present day where Sonic easily escapes his trap for the opening scene, leaving both robots to once again eat his dust. The episode ends with a Sonic Says segment. Basically a few minutes at the end of every episode, serving as a short PSA where Sonic teaches Tails valuable lessons. In this case, calling the authorities at appropriate times.
If there's a fire or someone's trying to break into your home or somebody's been hurt, that's when you call 911. No way, Tails. This is nothing. 911 is for real emergencies.
I guess this is no problem for Sonic, but in real life, should this not be considered an emergency? So that was the first episode of Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. In the production order, but I think I'll save myself the headache of figuring which episode was the actual first to be broadcasted. Some jokes I liked, such as the bickering between the robots as well as how it backfires on them. Admittedly, it did seem like I was trying too hard to copy the running gags associated with Looney Tunes or the surreal logic and artistic styles of Ren and Stimpy. We also really don't get much interesting personalities with Sonic or Tails outside Sonic being a trickster similar to Bugs Bunny. Do I wish it was a little more inventive, clever, and had more of an appropriate art style? Yes, but this series did introduce me to Sonic the Hedgehog, and judging by the fact that this series did get a Blu-ray release, not to mention the fact that this episode alone managed to acquire over 3 million views on YouTube, it must be doing something right. Take that for what it's worth. But we still have one more Sonic series to go through, so join me in part 2 to see how the slightly darker version of the Blue Blur's adventures compares against its lighter counterpart with its first episode. See you then!